soft landing or hard crash?
Stay strong here, wishing you all the best. Good mood.
Hundreds of thousands of Russians are in a debt trap.
And honestly, nobody needs us here.
Businesses are cutting working days.
Well, what can you call it? The economy's burned out.
Putin isn't just funneling billions from the Russian budget to continue the war against Ukraine. He's scraping the last pennies from Russians' pockets. Hiding budget failures is no longer possible.
All the money goes to the special military operation, and that's why prices are rising. There's no money left in the treasury.
Even though the Kremlin tries to bleat about a soft landing or economic cooling, what's behind this economic jargon? Watch the special report. Special military impoverishment. The collapse Putin doesn't talk about.
I'm outraged about potatoes. Why are potatoes so expensive? 99. Almost 100 rubles per kilo.
Things have gotten pricier. It used to be cheaper at the market.
Which items are seeing the biggest price hikes?
Well, everything.
The basic minimum for many Russians is turning into a luxurious maximum.
Take fish, for example. I buy herring, and in just 2 months, the price has jumped almost 1.5 times.
Prices rise every day, but salaries can't keep up.
Salaries are rising more slowly, so to speak, than the prices of food and medicine.
Does our government care about us pensioners? Of course not. Why? Who knows? Because of the war, mostly. All the money goes to the war.
The idea of personal savings has become a distant dream for Russians.
Yeah. Good luck saving with our salaries. Here in Ostrov and Pskov, you're hardly going to save anything. Not more than a month. Our salaries are nothing to write home about. A week, if you're lucky. It's all money, expenses.
The truth is, Russians' complaints go unanswered. After all, in the high offices, there's a different reality.
Russia is the 4th largest economy in the world. First is China, then the USA, then India, then Russia.
Notably, Putin delivered his grandiose speech at a meeting with the crew of the Arkhangelsk submarine, a vessel capable of diving to a depth of 600 meters, as if hinting that's about the level the Russian economy is at right now. Even in the lexicon of Kremlin analysts, the subversive word stagnation is increasingly slipping through.
We see this in the pace of GDP and industrial growth. The second quarter can be considered technical stagnation.
Since 2022, Putin and his cronies have insisted that sanctions don't faze Russia and that the economy has a margin of strength.
For 3 years, it was sort of jogging along, but it was running on drugs, on steroids, pumped through budget channels, pouring huge amounts of money into the military-industrial complex, stimulating import substitution. This created a sense of revival, but now it's all over. The economy has slowed so much that Putin is starting to berate the government.
And he's demanding what amounts to changing the laws of economics. In the best Soviet traditions, he sets plans and scolds for their failure. The government got an earful for Putin's unfulfilled dreams, as they had promised the Kremlin dictator 2.5% economic growth, but the forecast was slashed to 1.2%. Not exactly an inspiring figure for a triumphant headline.
Last year, we talked with you, discussed everything happening in our economy, talked about the need to take necessary measures to combat inflation. We agreed that this would inevitably lead to a cooling of the economy, to what we then called a soft landing.
A thud instead of an explosion, negative growth instead of impoverishment. The Kremlin's Newspeak dictionary now includes new phrases: soft landing and economic cooling instead of economic collapse.
No, they mostly tried to deny reality, talking about the successes of import substitution and, a rising standard of living. They try to convince people they're living well, but people feel otherwise. No, you're lying. We're living worse and worse. It's reached a point where, we don't care about your titles when there's no meat in our soup. They live by the principle of just get through the day and survive the night.
But the money in the budget is running out.
Russia has allies, an army, a navy, and stable finances.
The allies have let them down. The army is rotting in Ukrainian soil. The navy is forced to hide in ports, fearing Ukrainian drones. And the finances. According to the Russian Ministry of Finance, by the end of August, a hole of 4.2 trillion rubles had formed in the Kremlin's budget, 150 times larger than at the same time last year. 4.2 trillion rubles. That's just under half of the Kremlin's annual military budget. With that money, at average prices across Russia, you could buy 840,000 apartments in the regions, essentially an entire million-person city.
Uglerod settlement, Krasnosulinsky district. This is Tolstoy Street. We have 2 barracks here. Can you imagine? People live here. Look at the conditions they're living in.
Посмотрите, в каких условиях люди живут.
Here's the real picture of Putin's prosperity: barracks, peeling walls, and decay.
And honestly, nobody needs us here. There's no water at all, no toilet. We buy coal. For example, I buy coal and heat the stove at home.
Tamara Petrovna, we have the 4th largest economy in the world after all.
Oh, come on.
This isn't an isolated story. While the Kremlin pretends to maintain economic stability, ordinary Russians are steadily sinking into poverty.
A stove fell through the floor in early summer, nearly crushed a child. The house is collapsing. Look, it's practically bending.
Kids go to school from here to kindergarten, and the administration just throws up their hands. Don't like it? Buy a new place.
Are you able to buy a new place?
Of course not.
The money that could have helped millions of Russians escape slums, Putin chose to spend on war, on killings to satisfy imperial ambitions. Now, it's time to pay the price.
This comes at the cost of a challenging economic situation. It's evident in macroeconomic figures. Our estimate of GDP growth in July year-on-year is 0.4%, down from 1% in June.
Juggling tiny percentages, the Russian minister glosses over the fact that these figures no longer matter.
Stagnation is around 0, minus 0.5%, plus 0.5%, or even plus 1%. That can all be called stagnation.
Moreover, Kremlin analysts report that stagnation is inevitable. The Russian economy continues to teeter between stagnation and decline. The halt in growth can already be considered a statistical fact. Russians themselves feel it. Despite the Kremlin's economic jargon, life has become harder and more expensive. Here's just a fraction of the grim figures for Russia. 22% of Russians, every 5th borrower, can't pay their loans. Another 18% spend over half their income on debt repayment. These are the results of a survey by the International Confederation of Consumer Societies.
Russians are already cutting back. There's been a significant, noticeable reduction in consumption of, say, butter across the country. Retail chains are reporting this. Butter is no longer affordable for Russians.
On top of that, the variety of goods in stores is shrinking. As customers grow poorer, retail chains adapt to demand. Shelves are seeing less alcohol, children's products, and cosmetics.
If you look at Russian retail data, the assortment of goods has dropped by about 15%. Goods are still on the shelves, but the variety is much smaller because Russians simply don't have the money to buy much. Sales volumes have fallen, so Russian retail chains are reducing the assortment. Stores themselves are getting smaller to cut rent costs, and so on. This slow deterioration of quality of life is evident everywhere and will continue quite intensely. Russia is, how shall I put it, steadily sliding into poverty for the long haul, deeply.
This situation is leading to a phenomenon not seen in a long time. Russians are starting to protest. Cautiously for now, with minimal demands, like at least not raising utility prices. Even corporations, which once formed a significant share of budget revenues, are struggling. Avtovaz, Kamaz, metallurgical plants, cement factories, and railways are switching to a 4-day work week to mask production declines and avoid mass layoffs. This isn't the first time Kremlin-affiliated companies have done this. People are sent on minimal pay to forced leave, but the unemployment statistics remain unscathed. The authorities have long proven they care more about reports than people's fates.
The main topic of recent months is what measures can be taken to save this or that industry. How to save ferrous metallurgy, for instance. You'd think war would demand metal, but the main consumer was construction. Russian construction has collapsed, the need for metal has dropped, and with sanctions cutting off the European market, the Russian metallurgical industry is forced to shut down plants and extinguish furnaces. As you can imagine, that's a dire story.
According to the Russian central bank, 1 in 6 Russian companies can't meet its obligations. Major players like Ozone, a leading marketplace with its own bank, tech company VK, the United Aircraft Corporation, and even close to Putin aluminum giant Rusal are drowning in debts reaching trillions of rubles.
There are indicators that can't be hidden, like freight transport by rail. It directly shows whether goods are increasing or decreasing. This year, it will drop by about 7 to 8%. It's already down over 5% for the first 2 quarters. I predicted in November that this year will be a mournful event for Putin. Despite all his calls, even the military-industrial complex will see negative growth.
Putin has already devised a way to squeeze the last pennies from people's wallets. The budget hole? Patch it with... what else? Taxes, of course. Next year, they've already planned to raise the value-added tax. The standard rate will increase from 20% to 22%. Starting in 2026, Russia will join the ranks of countries with the highest VAT rates in the world.
This is purely a tax on the poor. It's built into the price of goods, and food inflation is exactly what they call a tax on the poor.
This will trigger further price hikes, but the Kremlin is convinced Russians will be thrilled to shell out.
When people see their money being used for a specific noble cause, they usually don't object. Our people are very patriotic and not greedy.
Putin's specific noble cause isn't pensions, building schools or hospitals, and certainly not relocating impoverished people from barracks. It's the war, which has already devoured billions from the Russian budget. Its funding levels are unprecedented since World War II.
This is an extremely costly war. A single day of war cost them just under $1 billion, enormous sums. These are absurd figures. To sustain this budget, nearly all social programs, medical, educational, have been gutted. The financial and economic impact on the Russian Federation is already tangible.
Don't kid yourself that a war economy will pull Russia out of the crisis. It's precisely because of the trillions spent on the war that Putin is raising taxes.
The bloated war budget is leading to a major crisis ahead, perhaps by early next year. A recession, a decline, rising prices. The war industry generates demand. It distributes money, but there's no supply. People can't buy anything. Businesses can't buy anything. These are products that burn up and don't drive any development. It's a dead end, a path to collapse, just like the Soviet Union.
In short, Russia's war economy is money thrown to the wind. Tanks, missiles, shells. They create no added value. They're consumables that need constant replacement, costing millions. 42% of the budget goes to the war, and sanctions are quietly eroding Russia's not-so-glorious prosperity. Ukrainian strikes on oil refineries have accelerated the process. According to media reports, Russia has already lost a quarter of its refinery capacity. This means a drop in processing. Russians are already feeling the fuel shortage firsthand.
The situation with gasoline isn't changing. There's no 100 octane, no 95, only diesel. I've got 40 kilometers of range left, and that's it. Listen, there's no gasoline in Belgorod.
At the gas station, they just announced over the loudspeaker, gasoline is running out, don't wait in line. Imagine, this whole queue won't get fuel.
Dear customers, 92 is running out.
And with shortages come price hikes, by more than a third.
Fuel crisis in Russia. Prices keep rising, and in Transbaikalia, gasoline is sold by ration cards.
The Kremlin has decided to import gasoline, Russian propagandists report. That means buying fuel abroad, yet another billions upon billions from the budget.
In general, the situation is such that it's nearly impossible to find an economic solution in Russia that's unequivocally positive and doesn't carry negative consequences. Russia has driven itself into a mess where good solutions no longer exist, so they're scrambling to find ways to get money.
And get money isn't just a figure of speech. Putin gave the order for tax lawlessness. The loyal State Duma is churning out proposals, seize part of banks' excess profits to patch the budget hole, take 10% from financial institutions.
This is what you call tax chaos. It's unclear how dangerous this is. The thing is, the Russian banking system, on one hand, shows profits, but on the other, it's riddled with problems. There was already news this year that 5 systemically important banks received capital injections from the state because they were at risk of instability. So, talking about excess profits while simultaneously bailing out banks to save them from bankruptcy, it's a rather strange game.
Even large corporations have been put on the tax meter. They're facing mass tax reassessments and on-site inspections. Increasingly, these inspections uncover violations, leading to fines or additional levies.
Investments. This is the key factor. How much business invests today in maintaining production capacities and developing production can tell us how the economy will behave tomorrow. The Center for Macroeconomic Analysis and Short-Term Forecasting, a key macro center relied upon by the government, released a special review on investments, highlighting very grim figures. The bureaucracy and punitive authorities continue their arbitrariness, and businesses report that 2/3 of them feel the increasing pressure of it all. Who would invest in such conditions? That's why all these charts from Rosstat, from the Center for Macroeconomic Analysis, and from the Institute of National Economic Forecasting of the Academy of Sciences point the economic picture in one clear direction.
And the big Chinese brother won't save the situation. The Kremlin tried to present the signing of an agreement with Beijing to build the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline as a major investment success. But it soon became clear that's where China's help ended.
Look, all that was signed at the SCO summit was the finalization of the route for the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline and an agreement on possible supply volumes. Nothing more. There's no resolution on when construction will start or when deliveries will begin. China is currently shifting its energy balance, building a massive cascade of hydroelectric power plants in Tibet, allocating $67 billion for it. In other words, China is moving toward electricity and isn't exactly eager to increase its consumption of organic fuel that it could buy from Russia. And Russia can't sell anything other than energy resources, so it's unable to generate income any other way.
Russian metallurgy is also unwanted by its partners. China and India have their own robust industries, and North Korea doesn't need that much metal. In the end, Russians are left alone with the poverty Putin has led them into.
Here's what we need to prepare for: a real decline in income, disruptions in fuel supplies, shortages of gasoline, electricity shortages in many regions. We should also be ready for man-made accidents, not because of Ukrainian armed forces strikes, but because the infrastructure is worn out to the limit, and there's no money for repairs at all. They aren't fixing anything. When the cold hits, pipes start bursting. This means we need to be ready for lower average winter temperatures in apartments, possibly no water or heat. In short, Putin wanted action. Well, starting around November, there'll be plenty of action.
More debt, higher taxes, rising prices, and a falling standard of living. Russians are paying for Putin's imperial ambitions with empty refrigerators, loans, and crumbling housing, while the authorities spend billions on weapons. The soft landing strategy has failed. The country is engulfed in stagnation and impoverishment. The longer Putin wages war, the more devastating Russia's economic collapse will be. Ksenia Barvanenko, Special Report.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.